They're all in on this season and not necessarily the next season and the bigger picture in their lives right now.
Man, the college football national championship is set. Washington versus Michigan. Michigan is favorite -5. Total is 55. Money line is -210. We already said and heard Sharp, kind of give the take on. I'm on Washington money line. I'm on Washington spread. With this Michigan Wolverines team, how does Michigan win this game? Like, how is it? Like, the spread is kind of telling to me, right? The spread is kind of telling to me, and the spread is telling me that clearly the favorite and clearly who should win this game is the Michigan Wolverines. They've been battle tested, veterans from the coaching staff, from the players on the field. They have the toughness that you need, especially late. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. They're exactly everything that we thought they were this year, and then some, and they proved it on the field. So this line is really telling me, because I was with you with the Washington Huskies, because I think Penix, in my opinion, and I think probably the most opinion, he's the best quarterback coming out this year. Most NFL ready.
Yeah, for sure, most NFL ready. I think the thing with Penix is he's closer to his ceiling than a Williams or a May. I think that's the one thing you're talking with Penix. You're talking about he's got the highest floor in the draft, right? You kind of know what he is. He's safe. He can run a team tomorrow. He might not have the highest ceiling because he's closer to his ceiling. But I think you nailed it there. He's definitely the best QB in the country. Like, I don't know why he didn't win Heisman, but that's for another day. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand this, this bet here this number here. They beat, Pac-12, I guess they beat Oregon, though. I mean, we just saw them beat a Big 12 team, and, and Texas took them to the wire. But it was no slowing down Penix, right? But, I mean, we talked about it last week, right? And I'll hit that link up there as well, just to, kind of give that, that take, if you guys want to double check that, is that, Washington's strength was Texas' weakness, right? That secondary was Texas' weakness, and that was Washington's strength. Arguably, if not the best trio of receivers. And then you got a guy with a cannon for a left arm who could drop it on a dime. He made some real beauty, pretty balls out there over the shoulders, dissecting, going through his reads. He looked every bit of as advertised. But I'm just trying to understand, like, how is Michigan favored by this much? Like, that -5 is really, really, really telling to me. And I don't think all year Michigan has faced maybe Ohio State, but, you can't compare McCord to Penix at all, right? But, how does Michigan slow down this Washington offense? Because they're running hot right now.
Couple things I do want to touch, and a couple Ohio State fans have said this to me, and it's so true. Just imagine, everyone watched Ohio State play Georgia last year with CJ Stroud and how back and forth it was with a couple key injuries. I mean, no Jackson Smith and Jigba in that game. Anyone watching the NFL knows how talented of a rookie that kid is. And then you got Kyle McCord this year, and it was a back and forth game. I mean, just imagine if Ohio State this year had a Michael Penix. You think they beat Michigan if you swap McCord and Penix? So I don't necessarily understand this premise that Michigan's like far and away the most talented team in the country. I do think, remember when we talked about last week, we looked at the look ahead spreads and what the matchups would be. And it was Michigan -5. So I will say the odds makers, after watching Michigan and watching Washington, they haven't changed their stance. I mean, they reopened the line exactly where they had it posted last week, which I will acknowledge. Like, I like that. Like, that they're just going to stand on where they've got these two teams rated all year. I do think it's easy to – I mean, I said it preseason. I thought Michigan was going to win the national title. I think they were the better team. Now, here's why, and I said it last week. You can go check the show. I really wanted to bet on Michigan. I thought they were going to beat Alabama. I thought Alabama was a bit of a fugazi. If you go back to the preseason show, I wasn't a big fan of Georgia. So the fact that people were just talking about how good Georgia was, and me and Diddy kind of had this little side bet about how Georgia could get away with losing and they'd still be in. And I was like, man, that's just not what I see on tape. I just didn't see a dominant Georgia team. And so the fact that Alabama beat them, to me, that wasn't like this trump card win, where it's like, oh, Alabama should be the favorites over Michigan. Like, Michigan beat Ohio State, and they do what they always do. They sleptwalk the next week versus Iowa. Like, they didn't care about Iowa because their Super Bowl was beating Ohio State. That's just who Michigan is. Now, I will say this. I wanted to bet Michigan last week, but I think Harbaugh is literally backdoor interviewing, essentially, for some of these NFL openings through his agent. And you can tell me he is, you can tell me he isn't, but he fired his agent and hired Don Yee a week before the college football semifinal. And anyone who knows Don Yee's a power broker. Now, he's not like the guy that does everybody. He's literally the guy that handpicks the best of the best. Like, he's going to take on the top contracts. He's going to do the big boy negotiations. He took care of Tom Brady forever. He's the guy that does big boy stuff. And Jim Harbaugh didn't hire him to negotiate with Michigan. Jim Harbaugh hired him to negotiate with NFL teams and NFL owners. So I think that's why his team played a little distracted. They were way better than Alabama, but they let Alabama in the game because of all their special teams gaffes. And that, to me, was proof that
it was a messy game. It was a messy game last night.
They could have beaten them by 10 to 15 points, and that was my handicap. I wanted to bet Michigan, but is Harbaugh really paying attention? And my answer was no. And to me, I think Michigan's the better team, and I think they can win this game if they're buttoned up. But if all of a sudden Harbaugh's gaining more and more traction, all of a sudden you hear leaks that he's down to L.A. and Chicago, and it's definitely he's taking interviews, then, man, I like Washington even more because they're all in on this season and not necessarily the next season in the bigger picture in their lives right now. And I just feel like Michigan's a little distracted, and that's a problem.
Do you feel, because you just said they're all on this season, could you make that same argument that Michigan's all in on this season? Because they know after this year, it's fucking blowing up.
Well, like
the wrap.
I thought so. But like, part of me is like the Harbaugh thing. Like, I think everyone within the program is definitely all in, and I think Harbaugh's all in on this year because they all know that, like, there's sanctions coming. Harbaugh's probably leaving. If Harbaugh leaves, then McCarthy probably leaves. And then Sharon Moore's taken over a program that's kind of in disarray for a couple of years until he can right the ship. And so, yeah, I do think there's a sense of urgency for both these programs. But again, we saw it with the Eagles when Jonathan McGannon was talking to Arizona leading up to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was a distraction.
His just game plan was lousy. And you just can't have one foot in one door, one foot out the other. I just don't think it works that way.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I mean, we can say where was he? Where was Harbaugh before that? Stanford? Was it Stanford?
Well, Stanford, and then he was with the Niners, and then he had a falling out with the Niners because him and their CEO didn't get along personally. Harbaugh's a problem, like, personally. He's so tough to deal with, and right now he's at odds with Michigan's athletic director. Like, him and the athletic director can't stand each other. So, part of me thinks he wants to win a national championship and then leave that athletic director with all the chaos when him and McCarthy leave to the NFL.
My thought is that he's seen this and done this before, right? He's done that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't remember where they were. I'm pretty sure they were probably in a bowl game. I thought that Stanford team was maybe 12-0, 11-0 at the time. But I don't remember everything surrounding him when he took the Niners job and how that kind of how he navigated that. I would feel he's a little bit more seasoned, so he knows what to expect. I don't think he's going to take his eye off the ball. Right? Let's not forget he is a Michigan guy, right? From his past college days. But I think
I want to say when he left Stanford, Andrew Luck came back for his senior year, and that really stabilized the program. Okay. I'm almost 99% sure that Luck came back for his senior year when everyone was like, you're going to be the number one pick. You and Harbaugh are going to be a package deal. Then Harbaugh took the Niners job. Luck came back to college, and it kind of like everyone was shocked at that. I'm
Yeah,
almost positive.
yeah.
And then Luck was basically calling his own plays his senior year. And that's why everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is the best college kid we've ever seen. Because, every other college kid, they get to the huddle, and then if it's an audible, they're every player on the sideline is looking at their position group to see what the check is. Someone's got a card or someone's got a dummy card. Well, in college, like Andrew Luck was literally like running it like an NFL QB. He was like tapping on a lineman's shoulder, telling the O lineman what the slide protection was. Then he was turning behind and telling what the running back, which side to get on. Then he was whispering over, doing hand signals to the wide receivers, like stuff that you just didn't see college kids doing. So I do think that was part of Harbaugh's plan. Like he knew Andrew was coming back, so he left him in a good spot. To me, I don't think he cares about leaving Michigan in a good spot personally. He just hates the athletic director.
Yeah, I heard that. So we're looking at the coaching, right? Let's look at the X's and O's. How again? I think I go back to the original question. How can this Wolverines defense slow down this Washington offense? Is it getting pressure on Penix? Because I was looking back at some games that he had, some of the bigger games that he had. Obviously against Texas, big spotlight. Against Oregon, I mean, I think that helped because it was in Washington, if I'm not mistaken, right? Was that in Washington, that game? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it was. Yeah, it was in Washington. At Oregon State was tough.
Arizona was tough.
Yeah, Arizona was tough game, but I'm trying to compare it, and then the Pac-12, so you really can't compare Pac-12 and what's that, the Big East. It's it's tough to do that. So I'm just trying to see this matchup because the numbers telling me to bet Michigan. Like that's where I'm at. I'm at like I feel like Michigan is the play here. That minus 5 is very, very, very.
So if you're looking at the
telling.
handicap, and wanting to know, and again, so basically look at Washington and Texas, and we talked about our handicap. Like that was going to be a shootout, and we essentially just trusted Michael Penix to make the right decisions a little more than Quinn Ewers, and it didn't even turn out to be that. Quinn Ewers, to me, played really good football game. I thought he was spectacular, to be honest with you. It just came down to the fact that the two running backs fumbled, right? And Washington didn't have as many mistakes. They had the one muffed punt, but they didn't have as many mistakes. Those two key fumbles by both Texas running backs, that really was the one difference in possession, right? Like, because then Texas got the stop late, scored. Like, the thing about Washington is their defense isn't very good, like, and especially not their run defense. Like, you can run all over them. Michigan's going to run all over them. Like, there's no doubt they're going to do what Texas did. And you have to ask yourself, I probably trust a Donovan Edwards and a Blake Corum with ball security a little more than I trust Baxter and Blue, the two young running backs for Texas. So right then and there, I think if you're talking about like a possession, Michigan is less likely to beat themselves than Texas. Texas has wild swings of up and downs. You saw it in OU. They'll move the ball all over the place, but then they turn it over 4 and 5 times. They moved all over the place against Washington, and they had 2 key fumbles that kind of killed them. Michigan's less likely to do that. And Michigan, the difference in defense is Michigan's got better corners across the board. And I don't think that Texas has good edge rushers. Their 2 defensive tackles are phenomenal. Their 2 defensive tackles are better than Michigan's 2 defensive tackles. But Michigan's 2 edge rushers are much better than Texas's 2 edge rushers. And Michigan's second unit is much deeper than Texas's second unit. So, like, over the totality of the game, I do think Penix is going to be under siege more than he was against Texas. So that could be the difference. Like, he could just not escape a couple times. Like, if you watch that Texas game, there was a couple times where he dodges a free rusher and then it makes a spectacular play. Where if that's a sack, maybe the game changes and maybe Michigan gets home. So that would, to me, if you're a better on Michigan, you're just trusting that they can basically get to Penix where Texas couldn't.
Yeah, who's the best? Would it be Graham, you think?
Who?
Best or Moore? Graham or Moore on that Michigan Wolverines defensive line?
Yeah, probably.
I
mean, they're just good across the board.
Yeah. They're solid. That's the thing about Michigan. They're a solid team.
And they're a better defensive scheme than Texas, way better. Like they send overload blitzes. I mean, they got that same scheme as Baltimore runs.
Yeah. So the one bet I do like here, I think it's the first half. Is what I'm looking at. It's a little bit juicy. You've already said your side and your take that you're on Washington here, and Washington, plus money here. I think I like this Michigan first half. The -3.5. I like the -3.5 at even money and with the half but I just can't stand the hook there. The hook can burn you every time. My thought is if Michigan wins the toss, they're going to defer more, 9 times out of 10. But I'm gonna lay the chalk here, man. Give me Michigan to win the first half -150.
That's fair.
I like Michigan first half. I want to say Michigan has been in this spotlight before and Washington hasn't.
Oh, absolutely.
So I want to say that the bright lights might not face Penix, might not face some of the A1 or A players on the Washington Huskies, but don't know about the coach, don't know about some of the other skill guys. And these plays, and if you watch, if everybody watches the game, you see a lot of drops. Those are nerves, man. Those are nerves with big lights, and you don't want to make a mistake. Like you said, I don't think Michigan's going to make that many mistakes. I think Michigan punches them in the mouth, and I think Penix does some heroics at the end to see if he can win the game. I see how this is how that game flow is going to go.
It'll have to be that way. Like Michigan cannot get behind by multiple scores and have to start passing, like drop back and pass to get back in the game. But if Michigan can score, stay ahead,
control,
run the ball, score, and then like always force Washington to respond, I do think eventually they'll get that stop they need. Which and I want to be very clear. So if we're going to scale my bets, like we always talk unit size, that's why to me it's very important to talk units so that the listeners and anyone listening out there just knows how we're scaling bets. So last week, remember, I liked Washington versus Texas, 5 units on the spread, 3 units on the money line. This week, it's not the same. This week, it's 3 units spread, 1 unit money line. So just already off the bat, you should kind of know how I feel about the handicap in general, that like I'm tailoring down my bets just because the matchup to me can favor more Michigan ball control than it favored. Like to me, I just felt like Texas and Washington they both wanted to play up tempo, score.
Yeah, score.
And and that's just going to favor the more veteran coach, the more veteran QB who has better receivers and is less likely to make a mistake. This, I don't see it. This is like two different – this is like rocks, rock, paper, scissors, rock versus scissors. And I could just see rock kind of just breaking the scissors after a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I like this Michigan bet. This will be I like you said, scale, and just to stay fair to the viewers, I say I'm taking it, but you don't know what I'm betting. It's -150, so it's going to be almost like a 1-2 play. Not a 2-1, but a 1-2 play, meaning I'm going to lay the juice. So I'm going to put 2 units down. But for me to put 2 units down, I gotta spend 3 to win 2, right? To win my 2 back. So it's going to be a 3-unit bet, but only to win 2.